Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on service and sustainability. A very interesting topic and something that Tamant is looking to focus on and do far more on. My name is Roshan Pinto. I am responsible for the manufacturing practice here at Tamant. And today, along with me, we have a very interesting panel. We have Bob Roberts, who is the customer solutions leader at Thermo King and has been a part of the overall ecosystem there at Thermo King for quite some time now. And he's going to be talking about Thermo King and Train's Gigaton Challenge and what they are trying to do in the sustainability space and how it connects to service. We have with us Elena, who is the director for Stewardship Impact and is part of the Winfield Land O'Lakes Truterra family and what they are doing at Land O'Lakes from an overall sustainability perspective and how that is changing the ecosystem that they work within. And finally, we have Eric Artman, who is the editor of Warranty Week, and he is going to be introducing the trends he sees in the industry and what he is seeing as an area of focus from a sustainability perspective. And we are here to talk about how all of this focus on sustainability also connects to service and what it means to transform the way you look at your overall service life cycle with respect to sustainability. Thank you and welcome to the panel. How service is impacting this, wonderful initiative that you have going at Thermo King and Train.
You got it. Absolutely. So Roshan, I had a couple slides put together. Are we going to scroll through them or I can just speak to it as well? Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So like Roshan said, I'm Bob Roberts. I lead our customer solutions and technical operations team. So just real quick who that is. That's responsibilities over our technical support team, what we call our claims team. That's both our warranty team as well as our service contract team. Our education and publications teams. I've been with TK now for 11 years, and I was 11 years with Train prior, and pretty much have been just in the technical realm throughout most all my career. So excited to be here with you, everyone today, and if at the end, I know we're going to have some time for question and answer. Feel free to ask any question. No questions taboo. So, make sure you get it out there, and I'll do my best to answer it. If we go to the next slide, just real quick. So who Train Technologies, who we are, primarily three major segments broken into many business units underneath each one of these segments, but we have a commercial HVAC division, we have a residential HVAC and supply division, and we have a transport refrigeration division. That's me. That's Transport, TK North America. So I won't go too deep into each one of those, but some very recognized brands, obviously, within the industry and, leaders in most all our spaces. Next. And not to turn this into an infomercial for Train Technologies, I want to get into some meat and potatoes here really quickly and answer the question that Roshan actually asked. But, Thermo King, who we are, when you think about it, the way I look at it and the way that we look at it, our products and our people, what we do is we enable our customers to be able to deliver both perishable goods as well as passengers safely and efficiently to their destinations. So when you think about perishable goods, you're thinking trailer units, truck units, you think container units, rail units. When you think perishable goods, that's everything from pharmaceuticals, which is obviously near and dear to all of our minds today, blood plasmas to deep frozen, goods like meats and obviously things that have to be maintained at very deep low temperatures, as well as things like fruits and vegetables and ice creams and milks and such, right? When you think about passengers, you think bus HVAC, you think light rail, you think what we call our APU, our auxiliary power unit, our TriPAC. That heats and cools the tractor that actually tows the trailer. So TK has been around since 1938. I like to say there's a good story there. We don't really have time to tell it, but, we're the pioneer and the leader in transport refrigeration. So really, really proud of that. Now, to answer specifically, if we can go to the next slide, one of the things that I'm most proud about working with Trane Technologies and Thermo King specifically is around our purpose, right? And, if you hear our current CEO or even our previous CEO speak, our purpose is actually pretty simple, right? Make the world a better place, right? And one way that we're doing that is through what we call our Gigaton Challenge. Pretty neat thing around the Gigaton Challenge. Our former CEO, Mike Lamach, was at a climate summit. And, during that summit, he committed that Trane Technologies would enable our customers to reduce their carbon emissions by a gigaton. And if you think about, well, what's a gigaton? You're talking about 1 billion metric tons of carbon emissions reduction by 2030. And so that's really aggressive. And the funny thing there is our previous CEO and our current CEO, we have a motto, right? Commit and then go figure it out. So he committed without really having, a definitive direction to how we were going to do it. So that challenge came back to all of our different segments of our business, specifically to our different business units. And we all carry very specific goals and metrics around how we are going to achieve this Gigaton Challenge. So when you think about the four main areas that you see there, the first one you see there is accelerate clean technologies. So in TK land, that's transitioning from clean diesel technology to electrification. When you think about addressing system energy and efficiency, this is one that's near and dear is, every piece of equipment that we make has to be, whether it's more fuel efficient in the diesel environment, higher efficiencies in the electrified environment, but each piece of equipment has to be able to deliver efficiency improvements above its predecessor. But the one that's probably most near and dear to my heart is around reducing food loss from the cold chain. And you can see there, and I'm not going to steal a lot of Eric's thunder, but you can see that, 10% of the world's emissions are from food loss. A lot of people don't know that. So if food loss were to be a country of its own, it would rank third behind China and the U.S. in global carbon emissions. So if you put that in further perspective, one serving of beef emits 6 pounds of carbon emissions decomposing into the atmosphere. And then if you could accompany that today with, 50 million Americans today, and of those 50 million, 12 million of them are children, are food insecure, right? 30 to 40%, depending on where you source, somewhere in the 30% range of everything that's produced goes to waste, right? And to us at Trane Technologies, especially at TK, that's an absurdity, right? So we know we have this major problem in the U.S., and if you think about that globally, 700 million people are food insecure. So what does food insecure mean? Food insecure means they don't know where or when their next meal is going to come. And typically when the meal does come, it's not a nutritious meal, right? And so if you just keep that in perspective, if we can strengthen that cold chain, be an integral part of and help provide solutions from farm to fork for our customers and eliminate or dramatically reduce that break in that cold chain that causes the food waste, it can solve two major issues, right? It can help solve the carbon emissions as well as some of that food insecurity. And the last bullet over there to the right, obviously this is something that's near and dear to our heart as well, which is, transitioning out of those high global warming potential refrigerants and into more environmentally friendly refrigerants. And this is one that TK and both Trane have really put significant effort in. So when you think about our Gigaton Challenge, what I want to leave you with is there's some absurdities out there. We need to leave Mother Earth much better than what we found it. And the way that we're going to do it is together. And the way that we're really going to do this is through data, through analytics, and being able to really integrate that information into solving the overall problem with our customers' business. So we can go to the next slide real quick, and I'm going to wrap it up here. So, really, the question is, why now, right? And, if you look in upper left hand, one thing I'll say is you do the right thing because it's right, right? And I'm used to always be profit over purpose. And I can say that there's been a significant shift in that, right? Where purpose now trumps, in many cases, profit. It's the right thing to do. And if we don't act, there may be irreparable damage done. The other thing, obviously, is compliance. Things like food safety, CARB, EPA, right? These are things that are really driving us forward and really pushing the initiative. Now, to answer Roshan's original question, what does service and warranty contracts and sector of the business have to do with this? And I'll tell you, it has everything to do with it. Today, our customers expect more. Ali said it best, right? It's not just make the most efficient product any longer. It's how do you integrate your solution into their business and help improve their businesses, right? And, the good thing about my role is I get to spend a lot of time directly in front of customers. And I can tell you that the conversations have changed. They're very concerned about our company's purpose, what we're doing that aligns with what their vision and their company's purpose are. And sustainability resonates number one, right? And some of the things that I'm really excited about at TK, is using that service and that warranty data along with other data pools like telematic data pools and quality reliability data pools to really create solutions using data that are going to really integrate with customers' businesses. What we're really excited about is our remote operations center that we just launched that uses predictive analytics, uses that data pool, uses it through a predictive analytic algorithm to help prevent failures from our customers' equipment. So telling our customers 5, 10, 15 days in advance before a problem occurs that the problem is going to occur. So if you think about that food chain, not having the shutdown that creates the load loss, that emits the carbon and prevents our ability to actually get into some of those food insecure areas is really critical. Another area that we're using the data from our service contract warranty as well as the other data pools is in condition-based maintenance, right? And this is another new and exciting area. It's always been traditional. 3,000 hours, change your oil. This interval, do this. That interval, do that. But we know that everybody's application is a little bit different, right? And using those same predictive capabilities, determining when is it right in that application to perform certain maintenance. And if you can push those out, you're only going to benefit that customer's business. If you have to pull it in, it's all about keeping that unit up and operational. So, Roshan, I hope that answered some of the question.
No, always interesting conversation, right, Bob? I mean, we have spoken about this in so many different forums, and I think this is only going to get more and more interesting. And but just transitioning from what you've been talking about to actual trends and data. So, Eric, would you like to maybe share some of your research and what you are seeing, and a lot of the discussions we have had are connected to what Bob's talking about and goes beyond just even the, beyond Thermo King and Train. So
sure. Well, I never thought of warranty as an environmental issue, but in the last couple of years, I've come to realize that they're very much one and the same. As Bob mentioned, just keeping refrigeration and freezers and air conditioning, heating, ventilation equipment in good working order is excellent way to cut carbon emissions from such things as food waste. And I brought some slides as well. I don't know if they're ready to go there, but I wanted to show you one.
Yeah.
I think it's a little further down in the deck. It's the one that has a Drawdown on it. Yep, there it is. Oh, back one, please. Very interesting. I came across this group. It's a group of scientists who put out a book in 2017. It's simply called Drawdown. And Project Drawdown is the result of all of their research into all of these topics that we've been talking about today. And they've come up with 100 different solutions, 100 different ways to cut carbon emissions and therefore, cut the amount of greenhouse gases in the world and therefore, reduce the amount of global warming that will result from that. What you see here is a chart. The line that goes exponential up like that is basically business as usual. This is if companies continue the way they are now, if people continue the way they are now, if countries continue the way they are now. What will happen is the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will just keep on increasing to, where we are now in 2020, 2021. I think this goes out to, it stops somewhere around 2055 or so like that. But there are two alternative scenarios. In 2017, the folks that put out Drawdown, the book, they came out with the first scenario, which is to keep the global warming below 2 degrees centigrade. And that's the middle line that you see there. I guess it's scenario 1. It's the original Drawdown scenario. In other words, we start cutting carbon emissions now, and somewhere around the year 2060, 2065, give or take. I'll be 100 years old, by the way. At some point, the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will cease rising and will actually start to fall. That's scenario 1. In the years since then, they've realized that scenario 1 is not a very good scenario. So they came up with scenario 2, which is to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. The reason for that is that, the scientists have determined that what we've already seen in the weather, the stronger storms, the more numerous storms, the heavy rains, the persistent droughts, the extreme droughts, the high wind that comes with some of these storms, and of course, the rising of the sea level in the ocean because of melting of ice in Greenland and Antarctica, that these trends will magnify and become really a danger to whole countries, if not whole cities, if we allow global warming to proceed past 1.5 degrees. So what they came up with was scenario 2, where the amount of greenhouse gases stops rising more like 2040, 2045, 2050, somewhere in that decade. And so the greenhouse gases go up, they stop rising, and they start to fall. So that's an explanation of what you're looking at in this chart. So they came up with the 2 scenarios. And what they did was they actually put some numbers to each of the solutions. Let's go to the next slide. This is their analysis of the food, the agriculture, and the land use possibilities. So many solutions. There's 3, 6, 15 solutions on this page. Everything from different ways to improve farming to you see it there, forest preservation and wetlands preservation. But I want to call your attention to the solutions at the top. This is what Bob was talking about when he's talking about train technology, preventing food from being wasted, preventing food from spoiling during transit, using refrigeration and freezing to prolong the shelf life of food, and improve the possibility that the food will be used as it's intended rather than discarded, where it becomes waste, it becomes landfill, which becomes methane, which becomes pollution, which becomes global warming over and over again. So what we're looking at here is, as I mentioned, scenario 1 and scenario 2. I want to put your focus onto the right-hand column, scenario 2. What we see there is that by achieving these solutions, by implementing these, whatever it is, a dozen, 15 solutions, we can possibly reduce the amount of global warming by 273.9 gigatons over 30 years. So, what's that per year? That's, 80 something gigatons per year. But what I want to call your attention to is the two in the top right corner, increasing the amount of plants that we eat and reducing the amount of food waste. These by far are the biggest solutions in that column. In fact, when you add them together, what's it? It's 91.5 billion tons of CO2 for eating more plants, and 93.8 billion tons reduction if we were to eliminate food, well, not eliminate it, but reduce food waste. That is 2/3 of this entire sector. So while you may hear, so much about preserving forests, for instance, and how important it is to keep the trees, and I'm not saying it's not important, but what I'm saying is you look down the list there, and forest protection does not result in as much carbon reduction, nowhere near as much carbon reduction as something as truly meaningful as reducing food waste. And you see all the other solutions on here, some very familiar topics, but the payback, if you will, is much smaller than it is with reducing food waste. Let's go on to the next.
So Eric,
yes,
yeah, just to maybe follow through right with what you're talking about here, we'll probably have Elena talk about a completely different side of the fence here, where we've been talking about food wastage and what goes into sustainability practices there. But Elena comes from the other side of the fence in terms of food creation, right? So so we'll have a little discussion there and then come back to this.
Okay.
So Elena, over to you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I am with Truterra, which is a sustainability business of Land O'Lakes. Land O'Lakes is a 100-year-old agricultural and food cooperatives. Cooperative. It's one of the largest in the U.S. And we are owned by farmers and local cooperatives, ag-retailers. I have been with the company 27 years and am intensely proud that about 6 years ago, they stepped up and realized that Land O'Lakes, with the connection to farmers, with its business of crop inputs and insights, with its animal nutrition business, and with the consumer-facing brands of butter and dairy products, has probably the best leadership opportunity to connect the dots between food and ag, sustainability, and become that convener of what is really sustainable, what should the food industry expect, what will the farmer be able to deliver. If you can go to the next slide, please. Just a few minutes ago, Eric talked about the Drawdown research, and in the area of agriculture, they have identified nutrient management in agricultural production as one of the elements that has the biggest impact on greenhouse gas reduction. Where Truterra comes in, we have a very unique platform. It's a data insights platform that collects approximately 100 metrics per each agricultural field, and we operate on millions of agricultural acres out there, and processes these data points to come up with insights that can be leveraged with both the food companies as well as with our agricultural partners, farmers that produce the food. So when the food company says, we do realize that climate change is a real thing and we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it is very important to enable them with insights to expect farmers to do A, B, C, but in a way that is profitable for the farmer, because farmer is in it to produce crops profitably. They're the best stewards of the land. There's always an improvement possible, but how is this improvement going to be done? Through data insights. And this is where Truterra comes in when it's platform to be able to demonstrate what exactly is happening on those agricultural fields. Where is the baseline in stewardship and profitability, and what conservation practices and nutrient management changes that could be implemented to make improvements. There is a little snippet there on that slide that shows specifically for the state of Indiana, what is the output of the Truterra Insights engine, and that is greenhouse gas emissions by county. So when a food company partner collaborates with Truterra on the Indiana enrolled acres, they can kind of look at which counties could be given some help and improvements could be done and what it would take to make improvements. And if you can go to the next slide. When a food company does not have direct access or relevance to farmers, it is possible that their requirements and expectations will not really jibe with how farmers view their business and what does and does not make sense for their operation. Again, Truterra comes in here with the data insights that's also relevant to the grower. We, for example, work with this is an example grower on the screen there, where we have mapped all of their agricultural fields that they farm. So, for example, they can farm 1,000 acres, and that represents a dozen fields or 20 fields. So all of those fields are analyzed for their environmental and profitability baseline, and then mapped on the profitability and stewardship continuum, so that the farmer sees how the portfolio of his farms or his individual fields is performing. Where is he doing? Where are they excelling? And which fields are fields of opportunity? And that generates a better conversation, because a farmer then doesn't see all of his fields as a uniform kind of performing unit. Those insights enable change, right? Those insights make a decision-making process a lot better. And then conversely, the food company then also understands that in order for their food supply to become more sustainable, certain things will cost money. So we need to probably jointly share in the cost of those improvements and reduce the risk of reversing, going back to the practices that they used to do and they no longer did, during the pilot project, for example, because the incentive was removed. So we feel that through those data insights and understanding what exactly is sustainable and profitable, we're able to connect the food and ag parts of the supply chain and deliver that level of contribution to mitigating climate change.
So, Elena, from your perspective, if you had one call to action, right, that you see with your partners and what you're trying to achieve, what would that be?
Action comes when it's easy to make decisions when you have full information and full insights. Similarly with financial services out there, if you're saving for retirement, you understand the value of having some funds in potentially more aggressive investment, right? Less aggressive investment, combination thereof that's right for you. That individualized approach, right, the recommendation is only possible with data. You provide the data, the financial advisor advises you, and you make the best decision with those insights. Same thing applies to food and ag continuum here. Data is key, but we always need to remember that farmers have already been stewards of the land. They just need the additional insights, and sometimes making a change that has a longer term effect. For example, implementing no-till and different conservation practices. It will take them 5-6 years to see those soil health benefits. They need assistance. We as consumers should be willing to pay for regenerative ag or conservation ag and how our food is produced. We cannot just show up at the store and see everything is kind of the same. So food companies have a leadership role that they need to step up and be share the risk with the farmers, right? And basically jointly invest so that we are operating, with the same common denominator of what is sustainable and what is profitable.
Makes sense. Thank you, Elena. Eric, moving back to you, I know you had a little more interesting insight to share. If we could just quickly cover that, that would be helpful.
Sure. I'll be very quick. If we could go back to the slide that, we were looking at with food waste. Let's go there. I was talking about food and agriculture and land use, and I pointed out the enormous benefit of reducing food waste. Here, those top two solutions are 2/3 of the total. Let's go to the next slide. Now we're looking at industry and improvements in industry, and we have 10 solutions on the list here. Possibly reducing carbon emissions by 143.7 gigatons of carbon. But again, back to, what Bob was talking about with train technologies, changing refrigerants is by far, even more so in this category, changing refrigerants and, going to alternative refrigerants together is over 100. Is 100 and 108.2 out of the 143.7. That's more than 3/4 of the benefit in this entire category coming from changing refrigerants. And again, you hear so much in the press about recycling and benefits. And I'm not saying there's no benefits to it, but look at the numbers. Changing refrigerants is well over 100 gigatons, while recycling promises what? 6 gigatons. So it's very, very important to look at refrigerants and alternative refrigerants. That's the point I want to make there. It's an enormous benefit to the climate. Back to you, Roshan.
Thank you, Eric. As always, very, very interesting, right? I mean, we keep talking about this. It's always nice to, have kind of conversation, but it's very real. And I think, Bob, from your standpoint, I'm sure you have a bunch of things that are being done, but from a call to action standpoint, if there are one or two things you want to summarize, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, Roshan, I appreciate that. So I'm going to flip the script just a little bit here, right? I think it's obvious that manufacturers and industries, we have a huge responsibility, right? And to do our part to reduce carbon emissions, to solve some of these world absurdities. But also, this doesn't have to be placed just on the manufacturers or industry shoulders, right? If you think about carbon emissions, for instance, 25% of carbon emissions comes from the residential sector, right? And if you look at things like just say lowering your set point in the winter just a couple degrees, or raising your set point in summer a couple degrees, you're talking about impacting, around 650 pounds of carbon emissions annually. Well, that doesn't sound like an awful lot, but when you think about 360 plus million American homes, and you start doing the math there, you're talking about billions of tons of carbon emission reduction, right? So something we can take and do ourselves. Another thing, the Energy Star rated lighting, the high efficiency lights, replacing your incandescents with the high efficiency lights, that can be 1,250 pounds of carbon emissions per household annually. You start doing the math, and these things dramatically add up. So when you volunteering at your local, food shelves and food banks to help where you can in eliminating some of that food waste and making sure that we get the food to some of our food insecure locations. So it's not just a manufacturer and industry. It's also something that we can take and do individually. And then, like Eric said, when it all rolls up, it now really impacts our environment. So that's my call to action, right? Looking internally, what can I do, as well as holding us manufacturers and industries accountable for delivering on what we're promising.
Absolutely, Bob. Interestingly, the latest Harvard Business Review has an article called Accounting for Climate Change. So not just talking about climate change and, sustainability being the right thing to do, but essentially trying to quantify how do you, now monetize and truly enable that within accounting standard practices. So this, I think, is definitely going to be a game changer in terms of how large companies start looking at sustainability. From a Tawant perspective, we are essentially focused on what is called a Scope 3 or S3 side of the sustainability ecosystem in terms of upstream and downstream impact when it comes to the overall supply chain, right? So outside of just the OEM like Thermo King, but what happens when it comes to your overall, parts return management? How do you optimize that? How do you look at standard practices within your supply chain? What happens to, scrap management? So a lot of our focus from a data quantification and functional workflow standpoint, connecting service and sustainability is going to be focused on S3 and, what we can bring to the table there. But as always, this was a wonderful conversation. We have a limited time today, but look forward to plenty more. I think there's lots to be done, and we are excited to be starting this journey with all of you. So thank you again, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.